Welcome to the channel, and prepare yourself for a story that begins with a routine strike in the Denver Mint during the unremarkable year of 1978, but ends in the heart of one of the most baffling coin mysteries ever to grip the world of numismatics, because what if a small mistake made it one of the rarest coins ever struck, a coin so strange, so cloaked in error and anomaly, that even the most seasoned collectors whisper about it in hushed tones, not for its value, but for its defiance of logic, order, and documented history. This is the enigma of the 1978 D. Lincoln penny, a copper-clad specter from an era of transition and turmoil at the U.S. Mint, where whispers of internal missteps and experimental dies swirl beneath official reports that claim nothing out of the ordinary ever happened. Yet how do we explain the specimens that have surfaced with twisted die rotations, ghostly outlines of devices where no design should exist, reverse fields marred by unexplained striations, and, most mystifying of all, obverse mintmarks whose very style and positioning defy the templates recorded for that year? And why do some of these pennies seem to carry remnants of doubled features under a microscope, doubled not once, but at seemingly divergent angles that no standard strike could produce, raising questions about whether rogue dies or misaligned presses played a role, or if some hidden die trials escaped destruction and made their way into the public's hands under the cover of procedural chaos? Because even the official documentation from 1978 shows signs of revision, redacted production logs, and vague memos about a retooling issue that was supposedly resolved in early March, yet the coins tell a different story, a story embedded in tiny anomalies like a fading FG initial beneath the Lincoln Memorial, or a hairline die crack that runs perfectly from Lincoln's collar to the rim, as if mapping out the fault lines in a minting system under stress. And then there are the stories, the collectors who say they found 1978 D pennies with thick rims on one side and razor-thin edges on the other, the whisper of a piece showing a ghosted outline of the wheat ears from decades past, as if the die had memory, as if something from a different age forced its way into the strike. And why do so many of these coins exhibit the strange shadow Lincoln, a faint second bust hovering just off-center, barely perceptible without magnification, but unmistakable once seen, triggering speculation about a phantom hub or a misaligned overstrike never documented in mint logs? And it doesn't stop there, because some believe these anomalies were the result of a brief, unauthorized test of recycled planchets, and others point to a covert mint experiment in which old dies from prior decades were deliberately reused to test press resilience, an experiment supposedly scrapped before any coins were struck. Yet these theories gain weight with each new specimen uncovered. Pennies that shouldn't exist, with textures inconsistent with the metallurgical standards of 1978, or die cracks so severe they imply thousands of overpressured strikes somehow escaped detection. And what about the coin found by a Kansas collector that bore a D mint mark struck over what appeared to be an S, raising the possibility of a die swap or intentional deception that no official would ever admit? And then there's the most bizarre of all, the penny unearthed from a Michigan estate sale, with what appears to be the outline of a second Lincoln Memorial on the reverse, rotated 90 degrees, and barely there, as if a second image had tried to surface from beneath. And though the Secret Service dismissed it as die wear, those who've studied it know better, because no wear pattern can produce symmetrical ghosting with architectural precision. And the deeper you dive into the story, the more it begins to resemble a conspiracy of silence, a puzzle locked within layers of historical bureaucracy, mint worker testimonies, missing production records, and a fever among collectors that borders on obsession, as they scour rolls, estate boxes, and bank vaults for another glimpse of the impossible, asking whether these coins are the result of negligence, sabotage, or a forgotten project erased from official memory. And still the questions persist. How did these anomalies slip past quality control? Who authorized the undocumented production changes? And could there be more, still undiscovered, hiding in your change jar or buried in a desk drawer, waiting to append everything we thought we knew about the 1978 D. Lincoln penny? Because the truth isn't just in the metal, it's in the patterns that don't belong, the ghost features that whisper of forbidden prototypes, and the uncomfortable realization that sometimes the mint's biggest secrets are hiding in plain sight, struck into copper, passed from hand to hand, and overlooked until the day someone finally sees the flaw, the crack, the shadow, and starts to ask, what happened here? And why is no one talking about it? Next. Today we unravel the haunting mystery behind one of the most confounding and obsession-inducing coins ever struck by the United States Mint, and it all begins with one simple, unsettling question. What if a small mistake made it one of the rarest coins ever struck, a mistake so subtle it went unnoticed by the very systems built to prevent it, yet so powerful it transformed an ordinary 1997 Lincoln penny into a legend whispered about in back rooms of coin shows, debated in cryptic collector forums, and hidden away in private vaults like a forbidden relic, because while most of the world went about its business in that final decade of the 20th century, deep inside the presses of the US Mint, something was going terribly wrong, a flaw in the machine, a slip in the process, or perhaps something more deliberate, something no one was supposed to notice, but the coin noticed, and it recorded every moment in metal, in the warped relief of Lincoln's profile, in the barely there initials that seemed to vanish under even the gentlest light, in the strange doubling on the date that curves like a shadow beneath the surface, not from mechanical error, but as if the die itself hesitated mid-strike, as if the coin was caught between worlds, and now collectors are realizing this was no one-off accident but part of a broader, more unsettling pattern. A pattern of inconsistencies and anomalies that refuse to align with official production records, raising questions about phantom dies, unexplained minting trials, and silent policy shifts that left behind more questions than answers, because how do you explain the appearance of a 1997 penny with a reverse alignment rotated 180 degrees, a coin that displays perfect features until you flip it and find Lincoln's memorial turned on its head like some mirrored dimension of the numismatic world? And what about the specimens with planchet flaws so severe that entire portions of the coin are missing, yet the edges remain smooth, as if something tried to erase part of history without leaving a trace, and still others bear clash marks that suggest the obverse and reverse dies slammed together without a planchet at all, leaving behind ghost images of Lincoln on the memorial itself, raising the unnerving question of how such drastic die damage was never caught, or was it caught, and covered up. And then there are the unconfirmed sightings, whispered reports of 1997 pennies bearing no mint mark at all, in a year when every coin from Philadelphia should have gone unmarked and every Denver coin clearly labeled with a D, yet some show faint traces of an S beneath the surface, as if an old die was reused or misaligned, a rogue imprint from a San Francisco proof facility that was never meant to circulate. And that's where the theories begin to spiral, stories of dies shipped to the wrong mint, of a late-night test strike using outdated equipment, of low-volume experimental batches that were meant to be destroyed but somehow escaped destruction, hidden in plain sight among billions of common coins. And if that sounds impossible, consider the testimony of a former Mint employee who anonymously claimed that in late 1996, just before the 1997 dies went into full use, an unrecorded batch of planchets was delivered, planchets that were never supposed to be compatible with the current alloy blend, copper-coated zinc discs with an inconsistent strike tolerance that caused the dies to behave unpredictably, sometimes striking too deeply, other times not at all, and sometimes producing what numismatists now call phantom impressions, strange residual features from previous designs faintly visible under extreme magnification, like the partial wheat ears some collectors claim to have spotted beneath the Lincoln Memorial, or the eerie doubling of Lincoln's eye, which seems to blink at a different angle depending on how the coin is held to the light. And the deeper the investigations go, the stranger it becomes. With reports of microtext beneath the bust, patterns of diagonal lines that do not match any known die polish, and coins with obverse that appear normal until tilted, revealing a second, lighter profile embedded within the metal like a ghost. And as collectors trade stories and circulate high-resolution images of these mutant coins, the legend grows. Was there a covert transition in die design that the public was never told about? Was there a confidential testing phase meant only for internal analysis that somehow bled into circulation? Or is it possible that in the chaos of the pre-Y2K minting surge, during a year when machines were pushed to their limits and production schedules were tightened beyond safe thresholds, errors weren't just tolerated, they were buried, and the only remaining evidence is in the coins themselves, hiding in desk drawers, change jars, and forgotten sock drawers across America, waiting to be discovered, cataloged, and obsessed over by a community that grows more determined with each anomaly, because for every 1997 penny that appears perfectly normal, another emerges that raises more questions than answers, a piece with ridges where there should be none, with a second chin beneath Lincoln's actual jawline, or a reverse so faded it looks as though it were struck underwater, and still the official records remain silent, offering no clarity on why certain die varieties appear in some regions and not others, or why some coins weigh slightly more than standard despite appearing visually identical. And perhaps the most unsettling discovery of all came when a collector in Oregon found a 1997 penny that not only had a misplaced mint mark, but also bore an unexplained groove across the date that, when analyzed under laser scanning, revealed a pattern consistent with an earlier die series, one never officially linked to 1997, suggesting that the die itself may have been repurposed or improperly retired. But if that's true, what else did the mint overlook, or deliberately allow? and what secrets might still be hiding in the billions of pennies already struck, unseen by human eyes but preserved forever in the unforgiving memory of metal. And as collectors become investigators and every new discovery deepens the sense of unease, the 1997 Lincoln penny has ceased to be just a coin and become something else entirely: a cipher, a code, a relic of bureaucratic missteps and unspoken decisions, a fragment of numismatic history that refuses to conform, and every twist in its story leads to more mysteries, more inconsistencies, more threads unraveling from the tightly wound narrative of mint precision we were taught to believe, because when a coin breaks the rules, it doesn't just challenge our assumptions, it challenges the very foundation of what we think we know about how history is written in metal. And if even a single 1997 penny slipped through with the wrong die, the wrong alloy, or a design meant for destruction, then how many more could be out there, waiting to be found by the right pair of eyes? And will those eyes recognize what they've discovered in time, or will another chapter in this growing mystery go unnoticed, hiding in a pocket, a vending machine, a pile of forgotten change, until one day it resurfaces and forces the entire numismatic world to confront a truth too strange for even the boldest collectors to have imagined? Last. Today we ask the question that keeps numismatists awake at night: what if a small mistake made it one of the rarest coins ever struck, not by design but by accident, a misstep so subtle that it slipped past every level of scrutiny yet left behind a cryptic fingerprint in the form of the 1988 Lincoln penny, a coin that millions assumed was mundane until peculiarities began surfacing, one by one, from dusty drawers, forgotten coin jars, and dealer tables, anomalies that couldn't be explained by or coincidence alone, because while the U.S. Mint operated under the illusion of seamless precision in 1988, the truth was far more fractured, hidden beneath a veil of transitional confusion and institutional silence, as the shift from traditional engraving methods to computerized hubbing created a perfect storm of error opportunities, and the 1988 penny became the unwilling vessel for all of it, beginning with what has now become one of the most notorious enigmas in U.S. coinage, the so-called 1988 reverse of 1989, a term that seems simple on the surface but hides layers of unanswered questions and suspicious coincidences, because somehow, in a year when only the 1989 design should have included the updated reverse with revised designer initials, a small number of 1988 pennies emerged showing the very same reverse, complete with sharper detail and a repositioned FG that hadn't been officially introduced yet, and to this day no clear explanation exists for how that die made it into production a full year early, sparking wild theories of unauthorized die use, early test strikes that weren't destroyed as protocol demands, or even covert production runs meant to test die longevity that were accidentally, or deliberately, mixed into general circulation. But that's just the beginning, because other 1988 specimens began to show doubling on Lincoln's profile and lettering that didn't match any known die variety, subtle shifts in Liberty, bulging serifs on the date, and faint ghost images behind Lincoln's head that some believe pointed to a hub doubling process gone awry, and when combined with the unexpected use of reverse dies from a future year, these signs pointed not to isolated error, but a systemic breakdown or cover-up, something hidden behind the calm face of a government institution that claimed everything was under control while collectors quietly discovered signs that it wasn't, and the obsession only deepened as more variations emerged, including coins with no visible initials at all, as if the die face had been improperly polished or an overused master failed to fully imprint the final elements, and still others with the initials floating slightly too high or low, as though a secondary hubbub process had misaligned elements by the narrowest but most telling margin. And these inconsistencies weren't random, they clustered regionally, appearing more often in the Midwest and Northeast, raising suspicions about which mints were producing them and why certain batches escaped into the public unnoticed, leading some researchers to track mint shipments, production timelines, and even employee testimonies, uncovering disturbing gaps in 1988 records where one would expect detailed logs, replaced instead with vague references to alternate die evaluations and press reassignments that suggest a scramble to fix something gone wrong without letting the public know. And just as the dust seemed to settle, a new wave of finds jolted the community. Coins with evidence of severe die clashes where the obverse and reverse images had struck each other without a planchet in between, leaving behind ghostly traces of Lincoln's bust on the reverse or portions of the memorial columns on the obverse, creating numismatic hybrids that defied logic and deepened the mystery, especially when paired with stories of planchets that were too thin or thick, clearly off metal but bearing the 1988 date, as if blanks from foreign contract coinage or legacy stock had been mistakenly used or, more chillingly, intentionally fed into presses during late-night production runs, And amidst all of this, a few collectors began to report something even stranger: 1988 pennies that under UV light or extreme magnification appeared to carry microscopic impressions, unintended markings near the rim or behind Lincoln's collar that resembled partial numbers, letters, or even patterns inconsistent with any known minting tool, leading to hushed speculation about misused test dies or fragments from unrelated designs embedded in the minting surface. And as these stories emerged, coin forums lit up with comparisons, overlays, spectral imaging, and failed attempts to find an official acknowledgement from the mint, which remained silent, fueling a wave of grassroots investigation that rivaled anything seen before in U.S. coin history, as collectors mapped die markers, built digital databases, and uncovered at least 5 distinct varieties of the 1988 Lincoln penny that shared no known lineage with each other, suggesting not one, but multiple points of failure or intentional deviation from standard minting practice. And still the mint refused to comment, citing closed archives, employee turnover, or the destruction of older records, all while a select few continued to find coins that seemed to resist every attempt at classification: coins with shifted mint marks, soft strikes that lacked expected detail, or reverse fields that shimmered oddly under raking light, as if the metal itself had been stretched during the strike in a way no standard press could replicate. And this mystery bled into collector culture, spawning a cult-like fascination with 1988 pennies, not for their monetary value but for what they represented: a window into the chaos of an era when analog tradition clashed with digital modernization, when new technology outpaced the training of those using it, and when secrets were buried not in classified files but in everyday coins, left to circulate indefinitely, quietly telling their story to anyone who could decipher the code. And even now, decades later, the mystery refuses to fade, because new finds continue to surface, like the specimen discovered in a rural Montana thrift shop that bore a reverse alignment rotated almost 180 degrees, impossible under normal collar mechanics, or the Pennsylvania coin with a reverse strike so shallow that only Lincoln's legs appeared, with the rest of the memorial vanished as if erased by an invisible hand. And then there are the anomalies too strange to classify, like the coin bearing what appears to be a double denomination impression, with ghost outlines of a Roosevelt dime beneath Lincoln's bust, a phenomenon technically impossible without intentional manipulation, but one which matches no existing mint error types. And these extreme cases force collectors to consider darker possibilities. What if rogue employees experimented without authorization, or test runs meant to be destroyed were instead funneled into circulation as souvenirs, bribes, or mistakes no one dared to admit? And the more you look, the more likely it seems that the 1988 Lincoln penny isn't just an error, it's a record, a metal documentary of a mint pushed to the edge of control, where secrets were stamped onto copper-plated zinc and sent into the world without warning, and now they lie in wait, scattered across the country, silent invitations to a puzzle with no clear solution, daring collectors to dig deeper, to question official silence, and to wonder what else might still be hiding in plain sight, right under our fingers, carrying the weight of a truth too strange, too complex, and too significant to ever be admitted in print.